Now, South Sudan's government has launched a major military offensive against opposition forces in the eastern Jonglei state. There are fears of widespread violence against civilians and questions about what this escalation means for the country's fragile peace process. Well, the world's youngest country gained independence in 2011. 2 years later, fighting broke out between President Salva Kiir's government forces, mostly from the Dinka community, and rebel loyals to former Vice President Riek Machar from the Nuer. Nearly 400,000 people were killed. The war ended with a peace deal in 2018, but it has never been fully implemented, leading to outbreaks of fighting. The latest confrontation is in the eastern Jonglei state. Government and UN humanitarian bodies report that since December last year, there's been fighting and airstrikes in at least 4 counties. On January 25th, the army ordered civilian aid workers to leave opposition-held zones ahead of a major military offensive.
We are not at war. The SPLA-IO, the spokesperson, said they are advancing toward Juba, so we are only stopping the advance of the SPLA-IO. Because we also have the right of self-defense, and therefore in the process of practicing the right of self-defense, you will see us fighting to make sure that we stop the advancement. But the country is not in war. We are not in war.
Aid agencies say more than 230,000 people have been uprooted from their homes in Jonglei state since December. They say many people are sheltering in open areas or in makeshift structures with limited access to food, basic health care, and restricted humanitarian aid.
It means to the patient that are in the location where there will be no supply, that at what point, if nothing is done, it would be very impossible to take care of them. Like we may, some medicines, essential medicines to take care of them. Children, for example, or even mothers, in terms of maternity, we will not be able to continue to support them and to take care of those people coming to our facilities.
Government and opposition forces have also clashed in other parts of the South Sudan, like the Upper Nile, Unity State, and the Equatoria region. The 2018 peace deal that brought President Kiir and former Vice President Machar together in a government of national unity has been strained further by a Machar treason trial that began in September. And it's doubtful that the long-delayed presidential election will take place in December.
Even now, as we speak today, we are perilously close to a civil war than we were 5 to 6 years ago. We are in a situation where the peace agreement is in threat. And when every stakeholder understands that keeping this peace agreement as the center of all our actions and try to implement it despite all the difficulties, that's the only way forward. But despite that, the peace agreement is today challenged in more ways than one.
Let's go deeper now with Daniel Akage. He is a senior analyst with the International Crisis Group, focusing on South Sudan. He's in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you, Akage, for joining us here on Africa Matters. A lot is happening in South Sudan. But has the peace deal in South Sudan unraveled beyond repair, or is the Jonglei offensive the latest test for the country?
Thanks for having me. Yes, the South Sudan seems to be sliding really back into open conflicts as we speak now. The oppositions have staged 3 things. In Jonglei, they're trying to gain new territories, which they have done since late December. And then in Equatoria regions, which is bordering Uganda and Kenya, where Juba gets its imports, there seems to be cutting off those links through attacks in border post areas like in Nadapal, which they did this month as well. And then in oil-producing areas like Unity States and Upper Nile, there seems to be getting closer to the oil. And so it looks like it's a sort of like economic attack on the government. They're gaining territories, which is helping them to mobilize forces and then attacking these vital supplies to Juba, the oil, which is the biggest revenue for the government, which is already impacted by the ongoing war in Sudan. So this is really a new uptick in violence. So South Sudan is no longer really struggling with the fragile transitions from previous agreement. It's actually in the sort of inactive conflicts as we speak.
And Akage, when we look at Jonglei State is prone to clashes due to competition over land, water, cattle raiding, and the presence of armed, community militias. But how much of the fighting is connected to the country's national politics? What is currently happening in South Sudan?
The ongoing conflicts was basically triggered by the trial which is undergoing, the trial Machar has been subjected to by the government in Juba. The oppositions that are fighting in Jonglei are not just only Machar loyalists. This includes some of the people who actually split off from Machar's party in the past, as well as the community armed group. The armed youth are also part of this. So the mobilization is using Machar case to mobilize against a common enemy. So it's pretty much linked to the national politics, but also there are local grievances. There is massive unemployment of youth in Jonglei, which is also contributing to this. So there are opportunities for looting as well as the opportunity to fight back in defending Machar, who is actually the leader of opposition in the country.
So is South Sudan at the risk of sliding back into a civil war? And what will this mean for the country?
It's really bad because it's happening at the backdrop of economics breakdown. South Sudan was relying on oil revenues for 90% of its budgets. And these oil revenues are taken to the world market through Sudan. When the conflicts broke out in April 2023 in Sudan, this actually slashed off 75% of oil incomes for the government. And then this is happening now, and it could potentially close down the remaining, the shrinking oil revenues that remains within the reach of the government. And at the same time, the war in Sudan pushed back more than 1 million refugees into South Sudan. These are returnees who were initially displaced by the previous war to Sudan, and they are now returning to this particular area in Upper Nile regions. So this is happening at a time when all these humanitarian crises are actually compounding, and then there is international aid cuts in the country that is also going to impact the people being displaced. And then on top of this is a climate shock, especially in Jonglei, where people were facing floods for more than 5 years, and then they were trying to maybe return, and then here is the conflicts. So it's happening at a very wrong time for the civilians who are unfortunately being targeted in these conflicts that we are seeing, judging from the rhetorics we are hearing from the commanders leading the war on both sides.
All right.
Of the democracy.
So let me pick your mind on this then, Akage. Was it a flawed peace deal, the 2018 peace deal, to begin with? And what has been the sticking point in implementing this peace deal, owing to the fact that, South Sudan is expected to go for elections in December this year?
The peace deal was designed to transition the country into democracy through elections. And the key three provisions of that agreement were first is to create a unified arms sector, because when the conflicts broke out in 2023, the forces are splintered. So the agreement envisaged bringing together these forces and create a unified professional army that will not be loyal to specific commanders or to one ethnic groups. The second major components of that agreement was to actually prepare a legal framework for the country. As we speak today, South Sudan doesn't have one single legal framework. It has the agreement, which is actually a legal document, and then it has also a transitional constitution of 2011 when the country became independent. So there is ambiguity around what should be the legal framework. If you go for election today, which system should the country use? That is not clear as we speak. And the third one was to prepare the country for elections. That means you do voter registrations, you do some kind of census, All those three provisions, none of which was implemented. The only provision that were implemented was just power sharing among the elites that fought the war. And that is really the prerequisites that you would need to be able to actually conduct elections. So that is also something that the ongoing war is actually making it impossible to implement these provisions that were key to the previous agreement.
All right. So let's have a look at it in terms of regional and, international response. And when we look at it in terms of regional, let's talk about the AU, the African Union, and also IGAD. So what can IGAD and AU do so as to de-escalate what is happening? And when you look at it internationally, what sort of pressure should the international community put on South Sudanese leaders to ensure that what is happening does not, slide the country back to war?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's really important to apply pressure, but it's very important to know where to apply that. South Sudan has some vulnerabilities which are also creating opportunities for applying pressure. One of them is the government has been supported. The regime in South Sudan had been supported by Uganda. And that is something that the regional countries, the regional blocs you've mentioned, the IGAD, the African Unions, could actually push Uganda to try to turn this support for regime security into something that would force the government to seek de-escalation rather than escalations. And then South Sudan relies for 90% of the government revenues on the oil being exported to the market through Sudan. So somehow what is happening in Sudan is not really separate. What is happening today in Jonglei or in South Sudan is a subset of what is happening in Sudan. And that is also another opportunity of looking at the solutions for South Sudan as sort of like subset of solutions that are being designed for resolving conflicts in Sudan. Mm-hmm. So this is really important for the regional countries, where these countries that are involved that might be playing roles that are negative could be used to help actually play more positive roles in lessening the tensions and de-escalating from increasing violence as we are seeing today.
Mm-hmm. And, just in a minute as we wind up, I'd ask you also what sort of pressure do you think the international community should put more pressure on South Sudanese leaders?
It should, but at the same time, if you pressure Machar is now under house arrest, he's incommunicado, he cannot communicate, he cannot issue orders, and yet these leaderless armed oppositions in Jonglei and elsewhere is actually very effective in taking territories. So that means if we apply pressure on Machar as the top leader, that will not be effective. So there's a need to actually create a new forum. All right. To reach out to these grassroots commanders and getting them to be involved in any dialogue.
All right. Daniela Cage, a senior analyst with the International Crisis Group focusing on South Sudan, thank you for your time and thank you for talking to us here on Africa Matters.
Thank you for having me.
Still to come here on Africa Matters.
I am Nogukanya Musi in Eswatini, where bridges are more than structures. They are lifelines transforming isolation into opportunity, one community at a time.
To Sudan now, which has been recently liberated from the paramilitary RSF, but keeps revealing traces of what civilians endured during the war. Whole neighborhoods are now associated with violent deaths and abuse. The discoveries highlight the human toll still emerging as the capital moves through a fragile period of recovery. Abdallah Hussein reports from the capital, Khartoum.
Bitter memories of a war that is not altogether over. In an affluent suburb of the Sudanese capital, residents reveal one of many grim reminders of a not-too-distant past. What appears to be debris and mounds of earth behind me in Khartoum's Riyadh district is not waste or construction rubble. This location has become a mass burial site, holding the bodies of civilians who lost their lives here during the war, underscoring the scale of loss still emerging in the city. Directly facing the burial area stands an abandoned building that former detainees say was used as a detention center during the period of the Rapid Support Forces or RSF control.
We were more than 400 people crammed into a very small space. Every day 2 or 3 people died. At one point, the number reached 13. Elderly people, the sick, Even young men died from psychological and physical exhaustion. We tried as best we could to prepare our colleagues' bodies for burial with water or cloth.
Several locations like this have been identified, and 2 mass graves have been found in this area. The reports of imprisonment, abuse, and civilian deaths are raising serious legal and humanitarian concerns.
When violations occur, the first step should be removing the means of violence. Yet, there has been no real discussion about disarming RSF forces before political talks. Many violations happened in Riyadh and elsewhere, and the lack of stronger international pressure is concerning.
Eventually, these bodies will be exhumed and examined, and there are hopes that investigations will follow. It's just one of many painful paths which must be traversed if Khartoum is to heal. As life slowly resumes, these sites stand as witness to confronting loss, responsibility, and the demand for justice. Abdullah Hussein, Africa Matters, Khartoum.
To the eastern DRC now, where the government and the M23 rebel group are accusing each other of failing to protect the Banyamulenge, a minority Tutsi community in the South Kivu province. Now, Kinshasa says the rebels are exploiting the ethnic community for its own interests, while the rebels accuse the government of failing to protect them in the first place. The Congolese Tutsis are now caught in the middle, as Prosper Heringorora reports from Kamanyola.
Ange Ndabiza fled from Uvira to Kamanyola on 17th January empty-handed after the M23 troops announced their withdrawal from the city, fearing a looming takeover of pro-government militia.
They threatened to kill us. They sent audio messages saying that we were unwanted in Uvira, threatening to burn us with tires.
The Banyamulenge are seen as foreigners in their own country. Research shows they've been under fire from both Congolese security forces and local militia for decades. The latest Human Rights Watch report shows that M23 rebels threatened and harassed people thought to oppose them, while pro-government Wazalendo fighters also restricted access to basic services for the Banyamulenge last year. Homes, shops and buildings belonging to the Congolese Tutsi were also looted after the M23 left Uvira.
There are 17 tribes in Uvira. Only one was attacked and its houses destroyed. The other tribes are part of M23 and have leaders there. Other tribes have not had any problems.
They've been wrongly associated with the Tutsi-led rebellions in eastern Congo since the late 1990s. M23 rebels argued that they will still continue to protect them.
Here we are looking for ways and means to help them live with dignity. We stand by them. We have not abandoned them.
Congolese authorities denied the M23's claims of ethnic cleansing, saying the Banyamulenge community enjoys the same right as other citizens.
Fortunately, the Banyamulenge communities that have always lived in Uvira, Bukavu, Goma, Kinshasa, and elsewhere have nowhere else to go, and they are saying this loud and clear.
But that offers little comfort for people here. Hundreds of families of Banyamulenge minority fled Uvira as M23 troops moved in. They say they are afraid of being targeted. Both Kinshasa authorities and M23 are trading accusations, each blaming the other of using civilians as scapegoats. For now, the Banyamulenge can only hope that lasting peace for all Congolese people will come soon. Prosper Heringorora, Africa Matters, Kamanyola, DRC.
To the southern kingdom of Eswatini next, where recent hailstorms and heavy rains have devastated parts of the road network. Many rural communities, including clinics, schools and markets, have been cut off. The government has launched several bridge projects, but critics say some are ineffective. Nokuhanya Musi has more from Lane.
Seasonal floods routinely wash away the only routes in and out of remote areas. While the government has built several bridges, many residents say they can't withstand severe weather. Since 2017, a group of engineers has designed and built more than 30 climate-resilient bridges that can withstand rare and powerful storms, turning former barriers into year-round lifelines.
Our lives were difficult before the bridge was built. I used to spend 3 hours just getting to the hospital or even the stores. Now in my old age, that journey has become much easier.
15-year-old Pindile Manti Makulu dreams of becoming a doctor. She says the bridge has reduced her school commute by over 2 hours a day, giving her more time to study.
Now, I can get to school easily and pursue my dreams. The shorter distance gives me hope that I can achieve my goals of becoming a doctor.
For communities in Eswatini, isolated by damaged roads and broken bridges, engineers are constructing essential lifelines, bringing together healthcare, education, and economic opportunities. The group, Engineers in Action, says it uses stronger materials such as steel decking to reinforce bridge structures in difficult terrain. The average project cost is about $30,000, significantly lower than the government-built bridges, which often exceed $100,000, thanks to their reliance on community labor and locally sourced materials. They plan to build 8 bridges in Eswatini this year that could help up to 20,000 people in rural areas.
So we're constantly observing not just the climate change, but also what is happening in the country overall to be able to cover the needs of the community members so they can have a safe crossing throughout the year.
Recent floods have affected over 200,000 people in Eswatini, and dozens of people have died since December while attempting to cross flooded rivers and roads.
The bridges helped connect 2 communities. During the recent rains, the Mbuluzana River was full and impossible to cross. Without the bridge, our lives would have come to a standstill.
Keeping the lives of over 20,000 people here moving forward, even when the rains rise. Nogukanya Musi, Africa Matters, Hlane, Eswatini.
And finally, to Nigeria, which is home to some of the most diverse tropical rainforests in the world. The biggest threat is humans. Yunus Demi-Orlu now reports on a group looking to protect them by tackling the root of the problem.
James Lelegala Bekawei has trekked these forests many times. As an illegal logger, now he's working on the other side of the law.
I was a logger before. Yes, I do log with some of my colleagues. Yeah, so we do go into the forest, cut down logs, and take them to Lagos just to have money.
Nigeria has been battered by the worst cost of living crisis in a generation. Many have resorted to illegal hunting and logging to survive. It's become such a problem that the Nigerian Conservation Foundation says the country has already lost around 96% of its original forest cover. In Okomo Forest Reserve and National Park, the Africa Nature Investors, or ANI, launched a project that recruits ex-loggers not only because they know the area and community well, but it also gives them steady jobs.
We'll bring logging and hunting to the smallest, barest minimum.
And they've made over 200 arrests in the past year alone.
The approach we have used, which we continue to use, is engagement with these people. Engagement with local communities and people who are involved in logging to begin to see the need for this.
The organization has also set up microfinancing programs in villages surrounding the park with Roshan Renewables, a microcredit company. It offers zero-interest loans to farmers and encourages them to form saving groups that pool money for community projects, like this cassava grinding machine that helps them make and sell flour.
They came up with this idea of SLG, this cooperative something. I believe this is the highest level of empowerment we have gotten from them.
Putting a little more money in their pockets as they look to bank on ecotourism and carbon credits in the future. Yunus Demirolu, Africa Matters.
That's our show this week. Let us know what you think about what's happening in South Sudan or any other stories you've seen on this episode by leaving your comments on our Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Zeda Radido.